There are 5 principles I'm going to give you in this video as a Gen Z entrepreneur in order to speak well, and some dangers to watch out for. Now, you're probably someone who wants to accomplish epic things with your life. You've got an established business, you've got content, people who rely on your ability to lead, to articulate, and to persuade. And the problem is you don't have a lot of that. Leadership, articulation, or persuasion. And I've noticed a very dangerous trend in Gen Z. I see it in Gen Z business professionals and speakers where they make a lot of big promises. They try to talk intelligently. And this can cause their reputation to erode very fast because, well, they overpromise and underdeliver, or they like to copy all the bombastic personalities that they see online and are just missing some very fundamental life experience. And this is why one of the most dangerous things a person can develop is the ability to be eloquent and articulate, because it can give them the illusion of wisdom when there is no wisdom. So I've been able to work with a few of the big internet Gen Z entrepreneurs over the last few years. If you name the top names, I've probably spoken to them at one point or another. And I've observed a number of patterns in the way that they do business and the way that they speak. I'm Gen Z myself, and my business is built around helping people speak persuasively and confidently. And so I want to make this video to share with you some principles of great speech. Okay, so there's a kind of speaking out there that we might describe as wealthy speech. And I don't mean materially, I mean that it has a richness to it. When a person speaks, people listen. And you can absolutely have this as a young speaker. What you need are speaking principles. A king, when he rules, has laws that he abides by, laws that he enforces and governs. And so there are 5 concepts that are very much lost in today's speaking that I can tell you that people at a very high level have. And this is the idea of the elite speaker. This is a phrase that we're going to reference a few times throughout this video. And we actually have a chart in our company that we call the articulate ascent. And this is the speaking journey, the 9 stages that a person usually goes through in life when they're trying to improve communication. Everyone wants what it's called a stage 9. It's the golden tongue, the wizard talk. Every word matters, and you kind of speak like Gandalf or whoever your favorite fantasy wizard is. And the 3 big qualities that this person has, by the way, the 3 big qualities inside are humility, simplicity, and storytelling. Humility, simplicity, and storytelling. And each of these takes time to develop in a person, which is usually why you end up being 80 years old by the time you become a golden tongue. So those are just 3 things I want you to keep in mind. The only one that we're going to dive into today is humility. And there's a very specific kind of humility that's very attractive in a speaker. And I do not see this in any Gen Z entrepreneurs, or at least I don't see a lot of it. And it's this idea of intellectual humility. And this is your ability to say, I don't know, to an answer, on a podcast, on a YouTube video, and be okay with that. And it's really missing from the Gen Z entrepreneurial spirit. And there's such a great strength to it too, because it's so hard to do. It's easy to talk vague and overpromise. And one of the biggest speaking principle that hasn't steered me wrong is Shakespeare's "have more than you show, say less than you know." That's kind of the prerequisite. That's the foundation of this Jenga tower that we're going to build on today. One of the biggest principles that I want to share with you before we get into the 5 foundational concepts is when elite speakers speak, they create. They create their world. Most people today just do not possess any generative qualities to their speaking. It's very dull. And so that leads us to the very first principle, which is visionary language. One of the things that I want you to understand is that you can create momentum in your speech, in your sentences, and in your ideas. And this starts with how you begin your sentence. If you start that sentence strong and you don't use any hedge words, you start with force and projection in the beginning, then that carries through the rest of your thought. Whenever we study speaking, and at our company we have a software called the Speech Map that we use to analyze someone's speech, we break our analysis down into 3 sections of a sentence. We have the intro, the content, and the conclusion. And what we'll normally do is we'll send a device out and we'll monitor how someone structures their thoughts and ideas. And one of the patterns that we often find is that most great ideas are introduced poorly. They're like gold wrapped in nuclear radiation paper. And so understanding how to start a sentence without any fillers or hedges is great. Elite speakers know that there are certain phrases that demonstrate maturity and vision. So for example, these are phrases like, imagine a world where you and I built something great. We believe that average people are above average thinkers. I see a future where you and I take the best of both of our brains and work on something incredible together. And this, by the way, is actually what we taught in practice with one of our Gen Z entrepreneurs that we work with, Tristan. He wanted to have more leadership and authority and leading his team, and visionary language, or learning the art of vision speak and weaving that into the intro of his sentences, gave him this ability. So these vision speak phrases do two things. One of them is they capture the vision, and the second is they show collective movement. It's not about what you want, it's about what we want. This is called vision speak. And this is something we teach, you can learn. The second principle is understanding that impact and presence comes from your use of silence. Silence gives a person groundedness. And it's like 1/3 of what makes for powerful presence. Imagine asking someone a question and they took a deep breath. They took a sip of coffee. And they do all this before speaking. Like, it would say a lot about how that person viewed the question, themselves, and whoever they're speaking to, the room. Now, there's two kinds of silences that one can use. There's strategic silence and there's dramatic silence. Strategic silence is where you use that pause to actually think. You pause and you kind of think through your idea. And dramatic silence is where you might employ a pause for effect. Kind of like what I did with the coffee. I didn't really need to use that pause. One of the things that Proverbs in the Bible talks about is kind of the wisdom of someone who knows how to use silence as much as they know how to use words. And it's really hard to do. I just don't see a lot of young people have this quality. A lot of young entrepreneurs are kind of caught up in this trap of needing to sound articulate, needing to demonstrate their athleticism with words or their business acumen. And there's a lot of content out there that is engineered to eliminate pauses. I mean, this is a lot of social media and short form content. It's this intelligent machine gun mic drop tsunami of quotes. And what's funny is that if the effect you're looking to have is a power and a persuasiveness, it's actually achieved more with your silence than it is with your sounds. I don't think a lot of people are going to understand that. But if you can, it's going to make a big difference. All right, the third principle is the principle of the emotional mirror. This is a favorite of mine. There's one time I was flying back from London, and I was there with our Elite Speak team for most of February, and I met at the Las Vegas airport in America this businessman. And we were sitting at this table, and he actually ended up delaying his flight so that he could speak to me for several hours. And he ended up sharing with me a principle for good listening. And he said, the number one principle that I'm going to give you, Joseph, that can help you is to learn how to identify the emotion a person is experiencing and reflect, mirror, and articulate that emotion. He who answers before listening, that is his folly and his shame. He who answers before listening, that is his folly and his shame. So one of the principles that I've learned from this gentleman, David, is to stop, to let the person finish, and then answer. Avoid interrupting if you can. It shows strength, it shows that you care, and people trust those who they feel care about them. One of the things that we often work with our clients to improve is to increase their emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is your ability to discern, label, and reflect the emotion a person is dealing with. And this means expanding your ability to recognize emotions that are buried inside of words. And this right here on screen, this is a graph that we use called the emotional wheel. And it helps you develop a better sense of what a person is feeling. And emotional intelligence is a skill that you can learn very quickly with good practice. And it starts with understanding the shades of emotion that are out there and then practicing with being able to discern, label, and reflect a person's emotion. Reflecting an emotion is something as simple as, sounds like you're feeling anxious. Sounds like you're very frustrated with how that situation went. And what a person will often do is either confirm the emotion or add context. Yes, I feel frustrated, or no, that's not frustration. I actually feel really angry, and then they'll be able to provide you more detail. And this is the emotional mirror. It's listening and then reflecting what a person is feeling. It creates connection, trust in both professional relationships and personal relationships. Let's talk about number 4, texture and rhythm with language. Words very much shape the way that we view the world, and our ability to articulate the world with color and richness will cause other people to see it that way. If I describe a tree as an arthritic hand, likely most of the trees that you see going forward that are withered and gnarled, you're going to think of an arthritic hand. And so powerful people have a very deep and novel understanding of how things work. In fact, one of the reasons why I've suggested in the past on this channel reading poetry is because poetry introduces a person to vivid descriptions. And it expands the depth, the color, and the perspective of the world. And it also teaches good rhythm. And both of these themes, vivid descriptions and rhythm, all of this has been stripped away from the way that the internet communicates today. And this is one of the reasons why Gen Z's language and content is very reductionistic. There's just not a lot of color in the way that people present. And that's in part because, well, algorithms will often distribute content that has the lowest common denominator language, descriptions, ideas that everyone can understand, including the stupid people. And so if you can describe things with depth and perspective, people will listen and you will stand out easily. I think the last point that I would make on this is that the way that you speak now is a result of all of the patterns of your parents and all the major influences in life. And when I say patterns, I'm talking about rhythmic patterns, like da 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 da, like upspeak, where you end your sentence as an upward inflection. Those are all speaking patterns that are learned from influences very early on in life. And what we've found when we've really studied speaking patterns is that there are really 3 powerful patterns of rhythm that influence a person's decision. And we teach these inside of Elite Speak. These are called the vocal archetypes. By the way, we're looking for 3 to 5 entrepreneurs who want to work with us this month to become truly remarkable speakers. This is what we do for our clients. We have Tucker, who's gone from an anxious speaker to being more comfortable networking with billionaires. We have Mauricio, a hedge fund manager who's able to show up better in meetings and in pitches with his investors and have greater presence. Or Sarah, a technology founder who's found ways to articulate her thoughts better. The number one thing you can do to earn more money and change the way that people view you is to change your speech. Give us 8 weeks and we'll install confidence and persuasion into the way that you show up. The last point I want to share with you is a 5th principle I call rhetorical play. And I read about this on X recently, but the thing with Gen Z entrepreneurs is that they've been very successful, but they don't have a lot of experience in life. There is a basic core that's lacking. And part of that core, a very healthy center of that core, that we see in golden tongue speakers, those who have that humility, that simplicity, and that storytelling, is a very, very good sense of playfulness. There's a curiosity in their speech that allows them to not always feel the need to have an intelligent answer or an intelligent way of phrasing things, ready to go from their back pocket, because they can figure it out along the way. They have that trust in themselves. It's the mentality that Bruce Lee talked about of being like water with facing challenge or confrontation. And so what's really important is to develop a curiosity, and a curiosity of ideas. And one of the best ways to do this is to ask rhetorical questions. And rhetorical questions is a question that you ask not because you want an answer, but because the question itself makes a point. And I'm going to give you a very special list that you can download below this video, also put it up on screen. This is going to change the way that you speak, because what it does is it gives you an explorative quality to your speaking. And it does this by the use of rhetorical questions. What do I mean by this? Well, by asking rhetorical questions, it shows that you are able to take control of the conversation. It shows that you have authority, that you can reflect back on what you're saying. Why does this matter? Well, because your ability to show up in your business as a young leader, as someone who is going to go on to do great things with your voice and shape the world with your words, comes down to your ability to lead and take charge of the present moment. And that, by the way, is what we do at Elite Speak. If you're interested in solving your speech forever, you could schedule a call with our team below. Hope this video helps. Peace.